from that point of view, all good. Welcome. Today we're just going to have a look around my PCOR tray. I had a message the other day from somebody who was looking at getting one and they had a few questions about it. So I thought I'd just knock up a quick video. We'll have a bit of a look around with it, things I like about it, some of the things I don't necessarily don't like, a couple of little changes that could be made to make it a little bit better, and just a few of the things that I've actually done to it myself to make it more useful for me. Let's start with the rear drawer. Slides out, well, comes out a fair old distance. I actually made up this little cover here to go on to use extensively as a table and maybe even a launching site for the drone. To be honest, I haven't actually used it for that. I've got other tables than that, but it's still quite useful. Just your normal sort of stuff stored in here, a ladder, hammocks, axes, spare parts, that sort of thing. This car has been through a lot of dust, trip to Darwin, couple of trips up the Cape last year, and the rear drawer has not had any dust in it at all. So from that sealing point of view, no troubles are there at all. You do get a little bit of dust over here in the back of it, but apart from that, no issues with it at all. The interesting thing is that this handle to open it is a little bit close to the centre. I'm not sure why they couldn't have moved it over maybe 20 mil, put it here, and then put the number plate in the middle of the car. It's just one of those weird things that people point out to me occasionally. Along the back here, we have the extra fillers for the airbags. They do run off the compressor in the car, and there is a pump up kit in the glove box. So I guess these are just for an emergency. If something else happens, you can pump them up and down from here. Rear camera, pretty good. It is actually a bit low, trying to see tow bars and that sort of stuff. And because I run a stone stomper, when that's actually installed, this is of no good whatsoever. So I am thinking about at some stage just getting another connector for the wiring here and putting another camera up the top just for when I'm towing. Apart from that, for general around town, it's great. The rear winch in here, I've got to say, never used it. Have run it out, tensioned it, but haven't used it at this point. I took the hook off it just because it's just a lot of weight flopping around on here. It's just in the back drawer, so if I ever need to put it on in a hurry, I can certainly do that. Over here, normal 7-pin plug, Anderson plug, all good. Hiding up underneath this side is the tap and the switch for it. So we'll have a quick look at that. It's a bit tricky to see, but up underneath here is the tap and the switch for it. This is one of the issues, that getting to that switch when the tap's on and running can be a bit of a pain. I have seen somebody who moved the switch up into here, which would be a really good idea because you could just flick the switch and then use the tap easily. To be honest, we don't actually use it that much, just washing kids' feet off and that sort of thing. 2 spare tie mounts on the back. I only run the one spare around town, but I do have the other one. No dramas with these so far. The Rhino rack ones don't appear to come loose. I did do a post the other day about where the hubcap covers go. I rotated the tyres recently and the dirt had got into the little threads in here, which made putting the caps back on quite difficult. So I've just bought 2 little bolts and screwed them in there on both of the spares just to stop the dirt and muck getting into there. I did think that these tyres would rub on here, so I have put a piece of rubber down on here just from Bunnings. I don't think they actually touch, but I've just had that there just to stop the chafing a bit. More to do with the canopies, but I have lost a few of these rivets, I think just due to the flexing on corrugations. So occasionally it'll pop a rivet out, but easy enough to do. Stick some new rivets in there. Always carry a rivet gun with me. This is the driver's side rear tray compartment. This has just got the water pump for the tank and the ARB compressors and the manifold that runs the diff locks. I usually just keep all my air fittings and stuff in here, bit of soap for washing hands, not much else goes in this one. If you have really a lot of dirt on these and you try and wash them down with the hose, it tends to come down and they do leak in through here. So I have had a bit of trouble with water getting into these, but that's only doing it with the hose, Normal rain and that sort of thing doesn't seem to worry about them. But if you do run your pressure washer around them, it can come down. I was told that there was a revised seal coming out for them, so I don't know if any of the later ones tend to have that. These rear compartments do lock with the central locking on the car. The ones on the canopy don't. The rear canopy, this one comes with not much in it from standard. I did make up this little bracket here to come up with sort of a shelf that I could take in and out. This is just using that connect-it stuff from Bunnings. We normally just throw bags and things in there. We do have our switchable lighting. Oh, here comes the rain. Just your standard orange and white lighting. That's about all that goes on in the back of this one.
Yeah, we'll do that. You keep going with that paper and then we'll swap.
So the rain never stopped. In fact, it got heaps worse. So gave that away as a bad idea, and I've just come home. So we'll just do the rest of it here. On this side of the rear canopy, same sort of setup. I actually made up this sliding tray thing. We run a couple of front runner boxes on here, which stack, so we can get 4 on here for carrying stuff around, which works really well. And also a spot for table, which just pulls out if we need it. Just a handy way to carry stuff. Just got a nice shelf up here, carrying odds and sods, spare pluggers, that sort of thing. On the passenger side, we have the water filler for the water tank. This apparently is a bottle opener, although I don't know how you're supposed to open a stubby there without tipping half of it out onto the tray. So never actually seen that in action. And again, a couple of switches over here for the rear light and the work light up the top. Front one on the passenger side obviously contains the fridge. Just a 40 litre Engel in my case on a MSA. I think it's a 45 drop slide, which works really well. There is a problem that if you don't drop it down or you don't make sure you've got tension on it, it does come down and hits on the side of the tray here, and it can chip the paint off, which is a bit of a pain. It does seem to be a small fridge to take up all of this room, and that's my only grief with it. I've been looking for other fridges that will fit on this slide, but I can't find anything that's going to fit. I think it's the length overall that's the problem. It just seems like such a big spot to have not much utilisation for it. Over on this side is the water tank monitor, just the level for that. A vent in here for pressurising the canopy, and another shelf up the top here, again with bits of fridge stuff on it and that sort of stuff. There's an Anderson plug that comes wired into the canopy down here, and then you just run your own wiring for the fridge. I did have a bit of an issue with some water coming down through this interior filter. On the outside it was just a couple of slats that were built into it. So I actually got a grill from Bunnings and painted up and glued that to the outside, and that's completely solved that problem. It's like a little louvered vent, so that's done the trick for that. Same lighting as all the others, just the white and orange. Did insulate this lid and the ceiling just to try and keep the temperatures down here. I do have a lot more of this, so I might do some more of the camper, but I don't know if it's making any difference or not. Is where the majority of things are. So in this side we have all the electrical panel, solar input, the BMS 30 display, circuit breakers, fuses, 4 cigarette lighter plugs, the main control for all the lights, and a couple of USB plugs. 1500 watt inverter sitting in there, the old trusty travel buddy. Over on this side our 240 milk frother for the coffee, because of course you have to have one. Fire extinguisher and just a fire blanket. In behind here is 138 amp hour AGM. That seems to be doing fine. When it does die, which I don't know how long it'll last, obviously I'll stick some a lithium in there. The Manager 30, the big guts of it, also sits in behind this panel. Put the travel buddy up here, great spot for it. Had to lift it up a little bit on some blocks just so that it would clear there. Got the Somerville big tray in there, and we use that a fair bit when we're travelling. In here, this is just basically a drawer for carrying mostly electrical stuff. Camera gear, radios, sorted wires and that sort of stuff. This usually ends up with lights and all sorts of stuff in it when we're travelling. I did fit this lock here. As I've noticed on a few occasions when we're going over corrugations, this latch here, which just turns around like that, vibrates loose, and then the drawer starts doing this. As you go around corners, you can hear this bang and a bang. Hasn't done any damage to anything, but I got sick of that. So this is just one that you use for locking windows. Put the hole in through there. Plus the bonus of if you've got camera gear or that sort of stuff in here, I can lock it up separately. Just another thing that I would like to see changed, the 4 cigarette lighter plugs that we have here. I don't think I've ever used more than one of them. I have looked at trying to pull one out and stick an extra Anderson plug in place of it, just for running other stuff outside. So I've never used those 4. It'd be nice if that was an option where you could say like an extra USB one, or maybe just have an Anderson plug there instead. On this side we have the diesel filler cap. Just comes with its own key. And 2 more switches for the top light and the rear work light. All of the tray is aluminium except for this bit, which is steel. I don't know if that's a design rule for something because there's fuel going in. Not sure about that, but everything else is all aluminium. Another thing I'd like to see is some way to get access to this gap in behind here. With the width of this headboard, it would be an ideal spot for being able to put tables or mats or something like that. But as it sits there at the moment, it's just dead space. I did throw a couple of those foam camping mats in there to carry around, and that does work, but it just seems like it's a bit of wasted space. This little gap here wouldn't have to be much bigger, just so you could slide something in there. The main power wiring for the canopy comes out through this gland here and then runs inside and feeds up into the back of the BMS 30 in there. On my first trip up the Cape in July last year, did a bit of damage to these mud guards. As you can see, there's like a flare on here. When you hit any sort of bank, it catches on these and then bends them back out of the way. Ideally, you'd like to see that flare maybe go back the other way so it didn't catch quite as easily. Or even, I guess it's there for strength as well, but it's done it on both sides. I have managed to try and beat them back into shape a little bit so that these now clear to open them. But it would be better if that actually came down and flared back the other way. This is the passenger side rear tray. Just sorted stuff gets stored in here. Tarps, ratchet straps, gloves. Not much in the way of spare parts, but just miscellaneous stuff that doesn't get used very often. Nothing sort of like pumps or anything in this one, it's purely for storage. Does have the same issue that if you squirt it with a hose, it does fill up with water. Again, normal rain, it's not an issue. Nice touch that because my car is wrapped in the orange, this was all done in orange instead of the standard yellow. Both of the rear boxes are not sealed on the bottom. They've got this bit on here, but this is the actual tray. They don't seem to get too much dust or water in. You can see there's a bit of orange dust from drips in the bottom of them, and they certainly don't fill up with water. But you've got to wonder why even a 1mm sheet piece of aluminium underneath this riveted through, or just even glued to the bottom of it, which would completely seal them, would seem like a better idea. These hinge bolts up in here, all 8 of them have come loose. I've noticed on a couple of our Cape trips. They're all right at the moment. There is one on the other side that has come loose. shouldn't be too hard to tighten up, it's just an Allen key. But this rain gutter, which runs along here, is held on with these 3 little bolts. You can't actually get an Allen key into there. I did try and cut one of them back to make it a bit easier. I think it's just the one on the other side here. But it would be good to see either a smaller cutout on here or that indented the other way. So it would turn a painful job of having to pull this whole gutter thing off to tighten this bolt up into a really easy job where you could just stick a Allen key in there or a Allen key and a ratchet onto that to tighten them up. So I've had this tray in the canopies for just on 2 years now, and I've put 40,000 kilometres on it. And I've had no real issues with it. These little things like the rivets popping off and the catching on the guards, could be my fault. It's done a lot of dirt roads and a lot of corrugations. I do really like this tray. It's big and it's strong, and so far it's done everything I've needed it to do. There is a couple of little design changes that would be nice, but apart from that, I would recommend somebody getting one if they were thinking about it. If you've got any questions about it, just leave a question in the comments and I'll do my best to get back to you. Sorry I'm squinting, it's so bright out here. See you next time.